everybody, thanks for stopping by. This is Rob Riker, your instructor and mentor. And in this video, we're going to cover some of the Cisco certification updates that you might have heard about. Now, as we go through this video, we want to cover a couple of things as we're progressing through. The first of which is what these changes mean and how to approach the new exams. Then we're going to dive into how does this affect your current studies, what happens after the new exams go live, and finally, what and how do the exams look like and work, and how do you recertify? So when we dive into what do these changes mean, all levels of the certification ladder are affected. This means CCNA, CCMP, and CCIE are going to be affected. New exams add in network automation and programmability, and this is applied to all levels as well. Now, if I take just a moment and break this down, depending on what level certification you're attempting, whether it's CCNA, CCMP, or CCIE, you're going to have varying degrees of intensity and difficulty on what they're going to be tasked, or what you're going to be asked to understand when it comes to automation and programmability. For a quick example would be, in CCNA, you might just be asked, do you know what this output looks like? And it might be a JSON output or something along those lines. Where in CCIE, you could be in a lab exam and asked to configure a static route via Python or RESTconf or something like that. So just to give you an example of how that would come into play, depending on where you are in your certification journey and progression will determine the level of complexity that you're tasked with actually implementing. Now, ICND1 and ICND2 are being retired. That's right. If you are currently studying for the ICND1 or ICND2, they are being retired. But don't freak out. You don't need to worry about that. You've got until the end of February, and I'll cover the dates here in just a moment, to take the current exams. Is that going to be enough time for ICND1 and ICND2? I certainly think so, especially CCNA. The CCENT and the CCNA, I 100% think you have more than enough time to knock those certifications out. Now, when I say being retired, you just won't be able to resit the exam. That's all retirement means. The exam itself will be retired and replaced with the new certification. All CCNA specialization certifications being replaced with a single CCNA. So let's say, for instance, you have a CCNA in security, a CCNA in wireless, and a CCNA in routing and switching. Congratulations, you've passed 3 CCNAs. Bravo. What's going to end up happening is when the new exams come out, you are simply going to be migrated to the new exam format, and you will be granted a badge that gives you acknowledgement to the skills that you learned and the certifications that you earned. And that's going to be really important because you don't want to lose forward progress. You still want to be recognized for the time and effort you spent in the certification program that you were going for, and then successfully passing the exam that you were going after and earning that certification. Cisco is going to give you acknowledgement towards that. Now, what's going to happen is there's going to be a completely new CCNA with an exam code of 200-301. I will cover more about the actual certifications themselves in a moment, but what we really want to understand is that there's a new CCNA being released, and that will replace all the current CCNAs. So we'll talk about how that affects you down the road in just a moment. So let's say, for instance, you've been in software development for a long time, and now you've been tasked with doing more networking stuff. Well, guess what? Cisco wants to give you recognition as well. So what they're doing is they've released a new certification called the Cisco Certified DevNet Certification Track. So this is going to be CCNA and CCNP out of the gate. I've heard that they're going to be doing a CCIE program as well. I don't know what that looks like or when that will come out, but eventually it will. The logic behind the CCNA, the Cisco Certified DevNet, and I don't know why they didn't give it a 4-letter acronym like they did with CCNA. Maybe they have, CCDA it wouldn't make sense for that because that would be the design track. They had good reason. But here, regardless of what the driver behind that was, so just to give you a really quick breakdown as to how this is going to work, the infrastructure certifications that Cisco has been well known for, CCNA, CCMP, and CCIE, they have been mainly focused on networking, right? So with the added programmability and automation components, it's more of an 80-20 split now, 80% networking, 20% automation and programmability. And this is good for the industry. I've actually started to dive into it a little bit more to understand how Python works and programmability and using things like Ansible and other stuff like that. So I'm just starting to get my feet wet, dipping my toes in the water, if you will, to try to understand how this stuff works. Because at the end of the day, I mean, in production networks, I've been tasked with configuring not super complicated implementations, but it's when you're configuring 50, 60 lines of code per switch, and you have to do that to thousands of switches, which is a very real possibility in larger enterprise networks, that would take anyone months and months and months. If you don't have months, you have to figure out a way to make that process go quicker. So I used to use things like SolarWinds Configuration Manager, which it itself, I would write a script and use the config manager to actually SSH into all these devices, push the syntax, and I would run a bunch of verification commands and wait for the reports to come back. So I used to use automation, but it was kind of a manual process. So I would write the script, and then I would let the automation tool, config manager, go execute the syntax for me. So kind of different way of doing it. And this is back in 2011, 2012. So I was doing that on a large scale because it just wouldn't have been feasible for me to log into each switch individually, or even opening up 100 SSH sessions from my one computer. That would have been time consuming still. So I actually like the way that they're moving towards this with Python, Ansible, and other technologies. On the flip side of that, the DevNet is going to be 80% any and software focus and 20% networking, because any good programmer should have basic understanding of how a network works, and any good network engineer should have a basic understanding how software development works. I do have a background in software to a degree when it comes to HTML and understanding how to write web pages and stuff like that from back in when I was in high school. So I do understand HTML. But that's pretty basic programming in my opinion. It's nothing compared to Python or any of these advanced languages that you're being tasked with learning today. So that's basically the difference between the two. Now, all exams go live on February 24th, 2020. And your last date to test on the current exams is February 23rd of 2020. Now, this does not affect the CCDE program if you happen to be going that particular track. CCDA and CCDP are being rolled into the new exams themselves. So CCDA, you'll get a new CCNA on February 24th, and you'll get a badge that says you specialize in design. CCDP, if you've taken that exam and you've passed, then you'll be getting a special certification for design. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Now, what happens to your current certs? Now, the life cycle of any cert that is active and current is still in effect. Retired certs are still valid. There's just no retesting. Now, I've actually never I don't have any current certifications that have ever been retired, but I do know folks that have been in the industry for a long time that have CCIEs that are no longer tested on. A very common one that I've seen out there from old school CCIEs, 4-digit CCIEs, is ISP dial. Another one would be CCIE storage before it was replaced with CCIE data center. And a lot of those folks, they've passed the exam, but they can't retest on it to keep it certified. So what will end up happening is the certification, to my understanding, will never expire, okay? You just won't be able to retest it. So if you've earned a CCNA, right, and you keep it active after the new exams go live, and you keep the CCNAs active, the exams that you've already taken, the certifications, you're still going to retain credit for that certification as long as you keep the current one that you have active. As long as you keep your CCIEs active, then you should never, I should say your certifications, not your CCIEs. As long as your Cisco certification stays active and in good standing, then any certifications that you took, say 5, 6, 7 years ago that may have been retired will never ever actually go away. So what does that mean for someone like this actually was a question I had, and so for if you have a CCNA or sorry a CCNP in routing and switching, or a CCIE in routing and switching, or a CCMP in wireless or a CCIE in wireless, this is kind of specific to you guys. What ends up happening, this is my interpretation of the what happened and the explanation that I received from a one of the Cisco certification program managers, was if you are currently certified CCNP routing and switching or wireless, or CCIE routing and switching or wireless, you will automatically be migrated to the new program. So you'll automatically receive a new CCNP and a couple of specializations and a CCIE in that particular area. So I've passed my CCIE routing and switching. So on February 24th, I'll receive a new CCIE, which is the CCA Enterprise Infrastructure. So technically, I'll be a dual CCIE. As long as I never ever stop recertifying and I keep my CCIE status active, because after February 24th, there is no suspended status anymore. It's a 3-year lifespan. As long as I keep my certifications active, all of my retired certifications will also apply, meaning that I will never ever lose the certifications themselves. So they'll stay active. So you just won't be able to retest on the current exam. So I won't be able to take the CCA routing and switching written exam after February 23rd, but I'll be able to take, say, the CCA service provider written or the CCA security written. What that means is those exams will maintain being good. That's what I've seen, and I'm interpreting that based off of other folks that I know that have CCA storage, CCIE's ISP dial, and stuff like that. Those exams certifications have been retired, but because the CCIEs that those people currently hold are active because they keep recertifying them every so often, the retired certs are still good. So as long as I keep my CCIE in good standing, I'll be a dual CCIE until I pass another exam track, which currently I'm working on service provider. So once I pass service provider, I'll be a triple CCIE and continue to go forward. So Cisco is going to give you a nod to that because they're completely revamping it. Normally, they don't do that. Normally, what will end up happening is it'll be a little bit of overlap between CCNA and CCNP. The CCNA and CCNP track, when they release a new certification, what they'll do, or an update, or they will say they do a heavy revision of the exam. What they'll do, and they change the exam numbers over, they'll actually give you some overlap where you'll be able to take both exams at the same time for a period of time, and then you'll be required to take the new tests. They're not doing that this time because the changes are so drastic that they're basically saying, you know what, we're going to eliminate one or two whole tracks and replace it with this other one. So enterprise wireless, enterprise infrastructure, they're getting replaced, or they're replacing CCANP route switch, or the routing and switching of wireless tracks. They're just renaming them because of the amount of changes that are happening. So with that being said, if you've taken those exams, then you should be in really good shape after that. Now, that's basically how I interpret the changes because of the migration from a normally, like when I'm going based off of just my understanding of the history of like the voice track, for example. If you had your CCIE in voice and then the CCA collaboration exam replaced CCIE voice, a lot of folks went and took the CCA collaboration written exam and they were automatically migrated to the CCA collaboration exam. So, but there wasn't they retired the voice track, but they didn't completely, there was only a single track that they modified in this specific exam. So, I'm sorry, it was the entire track when they did that. They did that for NA and NP as well. So this time, because the fact that the changes are so drastic, Cisco says, you know what, instead of making you take an exam, we're just going to migrate you to it. So it's kind of a nice attribute. So keep your exams active and any retired certs will remain active. So specialist certifications are granted now for every exam you pass, which is nice. Because now if, let's say for instance, you get into a job and you do a bunch of VPNs on Cisco firewalls and Cisco routers, well, then there's really there are exams that focus specifically on VPN technologies, on firewalls and routers, but that wouldn't give you any acknowledgement towards a certification. It would just be a progress towards a holistic certification like CCMP in security or CCIE in security. Now Cisco goes, you know what? We don't want every individual to have to learn all these different technologies and be really good in all this stuff if they only focus on 20% of that. So what they've made it is more modular, a la carte, to where if you're a security person, then go take the security core exam, and we'll talk about how the CCNP track works here in just a minute. You take the core exam, and then you take any concentration exam, and you're a CCNP. So they've eliminated the need to go learn ICE and firepower and the web security, email security, and ASA firewall, all of them in order to become a CCNP in security. It's still probably good to know those technologies depending on your job role, but they removed the requirement for you to know that in order to get certified. So whichever certification is achieved on or before February 23rd of 2020 will be auto-migrated to the new format on February 24th, 2020. So CCNA routing and switching, you will receive a new CCNA certification and a routing and switching badge. For CCMP routing and switching, for example, you'll receive the Cisco Certified Specialist Enterprise Core certification, as well as the Cisco Certified Specialist Enterprise Advanced Infrastructure. So that's basically how they're changing it up a little bit in terms of what your certifications will look like and things like that, because it's going to be important to understand how that attribute can come into play. So what do the new exams look like? Well, again, the CCNA replaces all current CCNA certifications. Pass one exam. So now it's basically they're taking technologies from both ICND1 and ICND2 and putting them into a singular exam. Now you might say, how is this different from the composite exam? It is different from the current composite exam because the current composite exam can test you on anything from either ICND1 or ICND2. The new CCNA has taken and they've moved some technologies from CCNA to CCNP where they technically belong. Although I did mention previously in CCNA training that I've done in the past where I thought it was good that they brought down things like BGP because you might need to know that. At the end of the day, it's really dependent on your perspective. But at the end of the day, it's ICND1 and ICND2 are being retired, and they've taken technologies that they think are applicable to the CCNA level in certification process that you would need to know. Now, CCMP and CCIE have the biggest changes, although when I wrote this PowerPoint, I kind of tossed myself back and forth, like, is that a really good point to make? Because all this, there's several things that are different, several things that are the same, or I'm sorry, there's several things that are different, but a lot of the certifications remain. There's only been a few major revisions, but you could also say the CCNA has the biggest changes because you're eliminating a lot of certifications. I think they've simplified CCNA, to be 100% honest with you. Before, it was if you wanted to dive into any track, you had to go into CCNA and then migrate to CCNP. And that made sense for a long time, but because they've changed things around, it doesn't really make any sense anymore. So I say the biggest changes are in CCMP and CCIE because of the fact that that's where you're really going to start to spread your wings, if you will, in the certification track. CCNA, you know what you need to go study if you follow the blueprint. Once you dive into CCMP and CCIE, that is where you really start getting into the meat and potatoes and into the weeds of the different technologies. Now, CCMP track for all tracks is 2 exams to earn your CCNP. For previously, for routing and switching, it was 3. For security, service provider, wireless, collaboration, I honestly don't know the other. I know service provider and security for sure, and wireless were 4 exams. I believe collaboration and data center had a combination of 4 or 5. So it made it difficult for you to try to understand what certification exams you needed to study for and so forth. Well, Cisco said, you know what? Let's eliminate that and just make it more, let's make it easier. So now you can take any technology core and one concentration exam in that specific track, and you become a CCNP. So, for example, if you've already taken route and switch for CCNP route and switch, guess what? Then you'll have already earned the core exam. And if you take T-Shoot, then you've taken the specialist advanced infrastructure. Guess what? Now you're a CCNP enterprise. So I'll take you over to the website here in just a minute, and I'll walk you through that process. But it's pretty easy. Now, what's cool about what they've done, and this has been a complaint in the CCIE market now for as long as I've been studying for one, and this goes back to 2011 when I started. If you're familiar with the CCIE process, in order for you to qualify for the lab exam to pass and actually earn your CCIE, you have to take this thing called a written exam. The written exam is all theory, right? There was no, there might have been with all the written exams that I've taken, I've only seen scenario-based things where it's, you click a couple of buttons and it's like, okay, you need to enable this feature on this box and this feature on this box, or, what is this and what is that? What happens if this happens there? A lot of scenario-based stuff, but which is fine. And it's a lot of theory. Do you understand, what protocol this is and, how this affects that? And what would NAT look like in this type of a design? Really just a theory. Have you really studied the material? And, that was daunting because you had to do that every 2 years. And I know a lot of folks that would moan and grumble about it, and it is what it is. So Cisco was like, okay, fine. A couple years ago, they came out with a continuing education policy to where you could just go out and learn a bunch of new stuff and apply credits towards your CCIE, and boom, you'd be recertified. You wouldn't have to take the written exam anymore. Well, that still applies, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. But what they've done now is they said, you know what? We don't want our CCIE certified engineers that are out there that have gone through the process, we don't want them to be, stuck with taking the written every 2 years. So what they've done is they revamped it. They say, you know what? If you have not earned a CCIE yet in that particular track, so this is not a recertification thing, okay? This is you're trying to earn your CCIE in that particular track. You could take the CCMP core exam in that particular track and then be automatically qualified to take the lab exam. So this new CCMP core exam is the new CCIE written exam. So, which is nice. It makes it easy for some folks, but this is not a recertification policy. So I want you to to understand how that process works. I'll talk about recertification here in just a minute. I have 4 slides for recertification because it's a big deal now. So now what will end up happening is you'll automatically be qualified to take the lab exam. Do I recommend that you go dive into the lab exam right away after you've taken the core? Absolutely not. I would recommend that you take all of the core concentration exams and know them really, really, really well before you start diving into a CCIE. And I'll show you what that looks like once you jump onto the website. Now, CCA route switch and CCA wireless are being retired. They're being replaced with enterprise infrastructure for route switch and for enterprise wireless for CCA wireless. There are 2 modules for each exam. You have 3 hours of design and 5 hours of implement, operate, and optimize. So they've gotten rid of the current troubleshooting, diagnostic, and configuration sections, the format that I took for route switch. I think this is a good idea because now you're having to do the low-level design and also having to actually implement it. So the way that it's been explained to me by the Cisco certification folks was you're given one big topology, and the first portion, the first 3 hours, is you're given a bunch of requirements that you need to be able to design for whatever that looks like, and then after that, then you're required to implement it. So they've kind of taken the low-level design aspect of CCDE and the implementation portions of the configuration section of the current lab exam, and they've melded them together to a new exam format. So you might think, well, this isn't that CCD? No, it's not. CCDE is a high-level design. You're being asked, based off of a certain set of restrictions and requirements, how would you go develop something? So there's always a high-level design, which is like one of your first initial conversations with a customer. And then you have your low-level design. Your low-level design is, okay, the customer likes the direction you're going with something and it makes sense for their business. And now you're brought in to go ahead and start taking that high-level design and start getting into the weeds. Okay, what platforms do I implement this on? What technologies do I use to actually get this to work? Do I need to order anything? Do I need licensing? Do I need to go talk out to the standards bodies and get BGP autonomous system numbers? Do I need to worry about addressing spaces and stuff like that? Do I need to own my own address space? So on and so forth. So that's where the low-level design comes into play. You need to be able to articulate your understanding of, okay, yeah, I would deploy DMVPN here, I would deploy SD-WAN here, SD-Access would work here, I need to use, Flex VPN in place of DMVPN because I need remote access VPN, so on and so forth. So you need to be able to articulate those changes as you're going along. So, how do I recertify my CCNA after February 24th of 2020? Well, you can pass any associate exam, any professional concentration exam, any technology core, or pass any CCA lab. Now, what's cool is Cisco has now brought the continuing education program down to CCNA. So if you never want to take an exam again, you don't have to. You just take 30 credits worth of training, or maybe you develop some exam questions for the test, or maybe you write a white paper. Cisco is going to give you multiple methods of obtaining continuing education credits so that you never actually have to sit for an exam again. But you still have to be continuously learning. The one common theme that you're going to hear from NextGen T, from myself, and from Cisco, and pretty much any other person on the out there that's Cisco certified that works in a production network or knows anything about networking, is continuous learning. You never want to stop learning because technologies are going to continue to evolve, and so do you. So things like software development and automation and programmability, those are real things that are coming into play. So things like that, it's going to be something you're going to want to become really, really good at down the road. Do you need to be a software developer that can write the next new cool kick butt app that's in the Play Store? No. You just need to know just enough automation in order to configure something on a router. So, but that's where if you don't know that, you could use continuing education credits to go take an automation course and stuff like that. So that's where we talk about continuous learning. If you're not a continuous learner, you're going to struggle in this field. Now, the specialist certifications, I put this in place now because for every exam that you pass, you get a specialist certification, even before you get your CCNP. So you pass any one professional concentration exam, any technology core, or any CCA lab, you automatically recertify, or you can take 40 CE credits. Now, the way that it works is CCNA and Cisco certified specialists, you can, if you want to do continuing education only, that is an option. You can't combine them. CCMP and CCIE offer a exam and continuing education option. With CCNP, you can take any any technology core, any 2 professional concentration exams, or pass any CCIE lab. These are all or, they're not and, just so everybody's on the same page here. And then you have continuing education and examination, pass any 1 concentration exam and earn 40 CE credits. Or if you want to do CE itself, simply take earn 80 credits and you're good to go. Now, CCIE is a little bit more involved because you have more things to worry about. So you can pass any expert level certification. So you can pass any, what do you call it? I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that first bullet point, because the CCIE lab exam and the expert level certification exam, that to me is the same thing. But however you might want to interpret that. There are 3 professional concentration exams, or pass 1 technology core and pass any 1 professional concentration. So what they're expecting you to know is basically earn a CCNP in another track and you'll recertify. And then you'll automatically be on your way towards, so that's why they put that little, this line under here. This is also a CCMP certification if done in the same track. So but they're not saying that you have to take security core and then VPN. They're not saying that. You could take security core and then you could take ACI. It's to pass one technology core and pass any one professional concentration. So you could take security and a data center, security core, data center concentration, boom, you recertified your CCIE. So, or you can take any one of the continuing education options that are there. So you can read through those and figure out what those are. And then continuing education only, there is the 120 credits because now they pushed it out to a 3-year life cycle and so forth. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual the landing page of the certification page. So if you would like to get to here, then all you would have to do is go to the following website, which is cisco.com/next level. And next level would get you to where you need to be, which is the page that I'm currently on. So as you're going along and understanding how this works, if we scroll down here a little bit, you will begin to see that we have CCNA specialist, CCP, and CCIE. I'm not going to spend any time on the DevNet side of the house, but what I will do is I'll take a look at CCNA real quick. So CCNA, you have the new exams go live on February 24th, 2020, which is what we've already discussed. And what I want you to understand is right here. There's some specific bullet points that I wanted you guys to see. So let's say, for instance, you passed ICND 1 and you would like to earn a CCNA. You have until February 23rd to complete your CCNA in the current program. But after February 24th, you will need to take the new complete CCNA certification. So if you have a CCENT today and you have not earned your CCNA, there's nothing wrong with that. Your exam will still be valid, but you won't be able to take that exam, but you'll still have to take the CCNA, okay? Now, if you already have a CCNA in routing and switching or security service provider or whatever specialization it's in, that's fine. Then all you would need to do is go and on February 24th, Cisco will automatically grant you a new CCNA and a badge in that specific specialization. Simple as that. Now, if we go to CCNP, let's go CCNP. So if you've taken your CCNP exam, let's say you're let's look at enterprise, for example, because that's probably where most folks are coming from. You can look at this on your own time too if you'd like. So let's say the migration tool for CCNP. So let's say, for instance, you've taken route. Well, if you've taken route, you would still need to take more exams. But if you've passed route and switch, or you pass switch, then you pass route. Point being is, if you've taken route or switch, then you automatically receive enterprise core. You would still need to take any one of the concentration exams. If you've passed all three, like I have, then you would automatically be given a Cisco certified specialist enterprise core. So you will see the new CCMP enterprise certification and these specializations. So enterprise core and enterprise advanced infrastructure implementation. That is a mouthful. So you technically earn one certification and 2 specializations. So you would earn 3 certifications on February 24th. Okay. So that's pretty cool. Now, the migration tools, I definitely would recommend that you guys, if you have any questions on what your migration would look like, I definitely recommend that you take a look at how all that comes into play, because that would definitely be something that I would be looking at if I was looking at Cisco certification. I wasn't sure. So those are just a couple of things that are options for you. Now, I will jump back over here to this, the specialist certification. Now, as you're going through this, you'll have a number of different tracks. So obviously, you have all of these different tracks, or these specialist certifications that you can earn. So if you, for example, were to take these 2 right here, this would earn you a CCMP in enterprise. Okay. Now, if you were to go and then take 2 more exams, design and then SD-WAN implementation, then you would be in pretty good shape at this point to start looking at taking the CCIE lab, because now you've taken and you've gone much deeper and you have a much better understanding of the advanced topics. So you'd be in much better shape to go after CCIE. And that goes for every track. I would say, for instance, in the security track that you pass firepower and security core, great, now you are CCMP in security. But I would recommend that you take the remaining exams, pass all 6, or at least learn the technology in all 6, and then go after your lab exam. That's what I recommend people do, because this way here you're holistically covering all the technologies. And one thing that I want to bring up a point towards is CCNA and CCNP are called Cisco Certified Network Professional and Cisco Certified Network Associate. CCIE is Cisco Certified Inter-Network Expert. The inter-network is kind of a unique portion of CCIE because you're basically saying, you know what, I know all the different technologies in my particular track. I know how they individually work. I know how they work with other technologies, and I know how to integrate them. And that's one thing that's big on CCIE is it's one thing to layer in or to learn technologies one at a time. That's great. That's really the way to go about doing it on any CCNA through CCIE. But the key differentiator between the CCNA and CCNP tracks and levels of certification and the CCIE exam is CCIE. You're taking what you know about CCNP and you're integrating all these technologies into a single topology and making sure it all works. There's no issues. Everything's reachable. There's no routing loops. The network is secure, so on and so forth. That's the key differentiator between the NP and the IE. As long as you understand that concept, you'll be in really good shape. I know a lot of folks out there that seem to struggle with that option where they're a CCNP and they think they're a CCIE, because I can say that because I was once that guy. And then I realized after I started studying for the CCIE, when I was a CCMP, I was knowledgeable, yes. I could do a lot of things for my customers and stuff like that. But I really didn't have that holistic understanding of all the technologies and how they integrate. Because until you start actually trying to get multiple technologies to work, what they refer to as a multi-protocol environment, then you're really not there yet. And it took me a long time to learn that. So I wanted to pass that little bit of understanding. And that's one of the key differentiators too between when you hit the CCIE level, there's a common term that's used. Now learning really begins. It's kind of similar to when someone earns a black belt in a specific martial art. They now realize that they still have a whole lifetime of learning to do in order to continue to progress. You'll only start getting better once you hit the black belt or the CCIE level. That's just my opinion, but that's just 8 years in the field, multiple certifications under my belt, 3 attempts at the lab exam, and currently studying for a second track right now, pretty close to service provider as we speak. So that's just my 2 cents and my experience about when it comes to attacking the certifications. So hopefully I've answered all of your questions. If I have not, please leave a comment in the comments below, and I will be sure to get back to you with a response on how that goes. If you want to know more about what we do here at NextGen, Jake in the upcoming the outro video is going to cover a lot of how that works. Until next time, guys, thanks so much. This is Bob Riker, your instructor and mentor here at NextGen. Have a good one, guys.
Jacob Hess here. Thank you guys for viewing the video. I hope you really enjoyed it. And I'd also like to remind you that if you're truly serious about your career in information technology, be sure to check out our Career Blueprint and Engineer Training Program at www.zerotoengineer.com.